Hi, and welcome back to SEO On Air. I'm your host, Aaron, and today we have Matthew Forzan, Managing Director at Yoghurt Digital. In this episode, we talk about Google Analytics 4, conversion rate optimization, and how to maintain your SEO health. I hope you enjoy this episode. So, where did the SEO side of things really start to pick up speed?
Yeah, so SEO for me, I think my first taste of it was one of these Diablo sites that I had created. I found a meta keywords tag, and I had put in things there that were relevant to Diablo, and that started to get me more hits on my counter. But then, just like I guess in the wild west old days of SEO, everything gets abused and manipulated, and it ends up changing. I discovered that if I put in some terms that maybe a lot of people would search for, even though they weren't related to my page, that I could get more traffic. And I think back then I wasn't worried about having irrelevant traffic because I wasn't really selling anything. I just really wanted to get more people to my site. So I did sort of things like that. That was probably my first exposure to it. Where I got properly exposed to SEO was straight out of school. I was doing a bit of freelancing and building websites for friends and family and a few, service-based businesses. I think the last one I did was for a timber flooring company, and I was I did great work. They were happy, but they were asking me, how do I get more inquiry? How do I make the phone ring? And I really didn't know at that point. I then started doing some research myself. I discovered things like Google AdWords at the time, SEO, and that sort of led me down the path of I have to learn this craft. If I learn this craft, it's going to be quite lucrative for me. I'll be able to then charge my clients for this, and I can help them further. And so
Right.
I ended up doing a bit of research on SEO. I found a company in Sydney that was ranking very well for terms like search engine optimization, SEO, search engine marketing, etc. I emailed them out of the blue and said, "Hey, look, I don't really have a lot of experience, but I'm quite passionate. Like, do you have any roles? Can I come and talk to you?" And that's what I did. I did an interview. I accepted whatever they would pay me, and I learned a lot very quickly from some very smart people. And the rest, they say, is history. So from that point, that was 2008. So
Right.
coming up to 15 years now. And obviously, a lot has changed then with myself, with the industry, and the work that I've done as well. But that was really, I guess, deep and diving. My initial idea was to learn this from a company and then perhaps continue my freelance work. And then I just ended up enjoying working in, I guess, you know, agency more than I probably thought I did. So I just stuck with it.
Right. So, this agency that you're talking about that you stuck with is the same Yoga Digital, or did you move out from that to start Yogurt?
Yeah, so Yogurt has been around for coming up to 9 years now. And I started it with two friends who had worked at the previous agency. Yeah, I guess that, like I mentioned, that love of agency, that life, the work that we do, the clients we work with, the ever changing nature, all of that things is still very appealing to me, and that's why I'm still here.
Right. So one of the things I can ask before actually getting to the nitty-gritty details of the agency is you've been in the industry quite a long time. What are some of, and I actually this question might answer with a long list, but what are some of the significant changes you've seen in SEO?
SEO specifically, I think, we kind of touched on it earlier. Something like a meta keyword is very easy to manipulate. I think it's been a long time since SEO was able to be manipulated in the way that it used to be. There's still
Right.
quite a lot of verticals, particularly in the affiliate space, that consistently get abused and probably always will. And I think a lot of the algorithm changes are based around those as a benchmark. What I've really seen, I guess, in the last sort of 10 years is there's a stronger focus on the usability of the website.
Right.
And it's very hard to measure I guess, the algorithm across that. But previously, it was very much a case of let's build the website, let's optimize it on page. Then there was a big focus of technically let's make it load faster because we had things like page speed come into effect, the different tools released through Google Search Console that weren't there previously, that really
Right.
gave us clues as to what we should be doing. Then it was, link building, right? Links, votes, page rank, all of that sort of thing. And I think UX experience conversion, really making sure that the website actually deserves to rank, is probably the biggest thing. And that's, I think, a big part of our agencies that we saw was we can't just offer SEO as a straight service because that's not how you succeed. You need to
Right.
have that sort of all-encompassing viewpoint that UX needs to be there as well.
And just for the sake of the viewers and listeners, can you give us a bit more detail about yogurt and what exactly they do?
Yeah, so we, as I mentioned, established in 2014. Where we really position ourselves is twofold. So number one, we help with traffic generation, so driving quality traffic through things like search engine optimization campaigns, content marketing, paid media, so paid social, Meta, Instagram, TikTok, all of that, but also Google Ads and Microsoft Ads and that sort of thing. And then second to that is then once that traffic comes to the website and it's realized, is helping it to take an action. So whether that's to purchase a product via an e-commerce experience, download a white paper, or pick up a phone for, say, a plumber, something to that effect. That's really what we do, and we do it well, and that's what we've really stuck to over the last 9 years. I think there's a lot of our competition that potentially does sort of one or the other. They really focus on perhaps driving traffic, or they focus on the design elements of helping conversion. But very rarely there's a lot of, I guess, skill that can do that end to end and really follow that user journey through that path and optimize it the whole way through.
How do you manage to kind of measure the success over the 9, 10 years that you've done it, leading the business and everything?
Yeah, I think just like anything, there's ebbs and flows. So there's ups and downs, and we haven't sort of, I guess, been protected from that as well. COVID was quite a difficult period. Coming into now, it's looking like there's a recession coming in Australia, and there's definitely opportunity there, but there's also risk as well. So in terms of determining success, we look more at the impact that we've had for our clients rather than things like headcount or how big our office is, or anything like that. Obviously, we have the key business metrics like revenue, profitability, retention of client retention rates, all of that sort of thing. But I think for us, for me in particular, I measure success by the impact that we have and the opportunities that come out of that. So because we've done such great work over the years, it opens up doors for us to be able to do other work. And I think coming into this year and moving into next, we've had a lot more opportunity to work with more, I guess, positively socially driven organizations. So not for
Right.
profits, charities, that sort of thing, where maybe historically we didn't have the opportunity to do that, because we didn't have the reputation, or because we couldn't afford to, right, from a commercial standpoint. So for me, I think that's successful. There's been a few. We won an award recently in Sydney for the Local Business Awards as the best outstanding marketing agency, which was really good. We're up for
Congrats.
4 awards. Thank you. We're up for 4 awards now at the Global Search Awards for content marketing campaigns, SEO
Congrats
campaigns,
in
paid.
advance.
Yeah, thank you. So I think like these are all they're nice to haves. I don't think they're have to haves, but it is nice to have some recognition of the work, and that then goes back to the team too. They work very hard. There's a lot of moving parts as you understand, and so for us to have that recognition, I think is just a nice sort of a pat on the back rather, when we are working so hard.
Right. One quick question is, if I want to start my website migration on the next week, how much time in advance do I need to start preparing?
If you've got a week, it can be done. It's just very complicated, and I think like anything, it can get quite expensive. For us, in that context, we would just have an honest conversation with you that if we wanted to help you in that area, like we could do that, but we'd have to move some projects around to make it happen. I also think it depends on the size. So, most of what I'm talking about are mainly bigger e-commerce retailers that have perhaps had a website in place for maybe 5 years or so before they've changed something, and they might be on an older platform or a less used platform like Magento, and maybe they're moving to something like Shopify. And in that instance, there's quite a lot that changes, and that's where that week is just not enough time. So in terms of changing a blog, that sort of thing, there are a lot of ways that we can work around. And I think the other thing to consider too is that we try not to get caught up in trying to get everything done in that week, for example, because realistically, in that week, there's going to be some items that we consider to be critical. Critical being that if you do not do this, you will suffer pain and misery,
Right.
like having pages no indexed. But other things like maybe some page titles, ideally we get that migrated across in that week. But if not, it would be okay to do that later on for the most part, as long as it does get done rather quickly. I think the main thing that we want to avoid is having to have a search engine like Google access the website once it's been relaunched, analyze it, so crawl it, analyze it, rank it, and then have to make a whole bunch of changes for that process to happen again, because that's really where we start to lose that ability to mitigate the risk.
I think I might have to rephrase that question because what I meant was if I had to do it in a week, how much months before today would I have had to
Oh,
start?
got you. Okay. Look, I think it depends, but we would say like 3 months at least. I think when we're looking, so we're working with partners, for example, they go through a very structured process as well. They have a discovery process, they have a briefing process, they build out wireframes, for example. They then have normally some mock designs that need to have feedback applied. So even from that design perspective, whenever that's happening, we like to be involved too, because quite often, the way that the modern web is less text heavy than it was previously, which from an SEO perspective can be not a great approach, because if you suddenly had, or if you firstly had a lot of text copy on that page, now that text copy is gone entirely because the design is more clean. You then lose that keyword relevance, perhaps, right? So, yeah, I think 3 months to be safe at a minimum. We did one last year, and I think we had like 10 months or something, and that was really good. It felt very comfortable. We had regular meetings and nothing was really rushed.
10 months seems like more than enough time to kind of properly finalize everything that needs to be done.
That's right. And I think the key reason, or one of the key reasons you want more time as well, is because if say, for example, the SEO agency is saying, look, design company, these are not great, we need some headings placed here. That then gives time for the design agency to ask, okay, but why? And what if we do it like this? And to have sort of rounds of feedback and properly collaborate whilst also keeping the client informed. Whereas if you have less time than that, you have no opportunity to collaborate, and that feedback loop is significantly shortened, and that's where it starts to get dangerous. So um, I think, yeah, in the Excel landscape, a lot of more companies, now that they've been through this process before, they might have done it 4 years ago, they're about to go through it again. They're a lot better educated, and so the more recent work we've done, we've had a lot more time. But I think, yeah, there are some, I guess, fun stories from the past where it was a complete nightmare and done very, very rushed.
One thing is that I think content strategy can play a part when you're migrating your website. You can pretty much have like a preparation done so that when you do migrate, you can have not that much of a decrease in your traffic. So I wanted to know how exactly could you, let's say, maximize that reach and how important would content strategy be in that field?
Great question. I think with migration, something that we always are considerate of is there's mitigation that we need to consider. And so, if we're keeping all things equal, URLs, headings, page copy, that sort of thing, and just the design is changing, typically mitigation is a big tick, right? In the sense that not a lot, there'll be some fluctuations, but typically not a lot will drop off. When we are, and that's sort of one approach. The other approach is then to revamp the entire thing at the same time. And there is a lot of risk there because you are changing things, but when it's done properly, there's also a lot of reward. So, in some examples, some instances, we have done things like content strategy, to first identify what should exist on the new website. So, what are we removing? What do we need to add? What does growth look like moving forward? And how frequently are we writing about things? What are we adding? All of that sort of thing. And we've had great success in that area as well. But I'd really distill it down to those two options: is we're playing it safe, or are we trying to grow at the same time? Because another tactic might be to migrate the website, let the dust settle, so to speak, and then implement something like a content strategy. But it really depends on the business goal.
Could you help us then create a content strategy for a newly migrated website?
Yep, for sure. I mean, I think part of that strategy is to look at the data of how things have been going previously. And then obviously when you have a new website, that data is then all different, right? Your bounce rates will change. The most popular pages will change. Internal linking, all of that sort of thing changes as well. So I think content strategy is one of those things that the sooner you have it, the better, of course. But you also have to do it right. I think one of those things that I've seen change in my time as well is previously, going back 10, 15 years, it was about let's create content, right? And there was that famous Matt Cutts meme, old Google engineer that just said, make more content. And so a lot of people were they do keyword research, they'd build an article, they'd post that on their blog, and they'd consider that work done. It's very much not the case. Like that doesn't work. We've got Chat GPT and things there now where people are sort of trying to shortcut this, and that's not working either. So yeah, I think to do it properly, it does take a bit of time.
So another thing that, since you mentioned it, is ChatGPT. In this field, let's say not SEO, but in more of content strategy wise, to what extent can we use tools like ChatGPT and other AI?
This is a hot topic at the moment. I think there's a lot of tools and things out there that can check supposedly whether a piece of content has been written by AI because there's watermarks and things that are there. And I think that typically happens when it's at scale. So, for example, if I said to ChatGPT, completely unprompted, write an article about how to run a podcast, for example. If I then copy pasted that, put that on my site, I can be rest assured that a whole bunch of other people would have done the same thing. And
Right.
so the question that I raise there is the issue that the content is written by AI, or is the issue that it's duplicated because everyone else is lazy and they've written it as well? So some practical applications that we're using it for at the moment is helping to speed up our workflow. So we can prompt it to generate some ideas about some topics that maybe we should write about. And that's not, like I said, a copy paste job. That's just to sort of help with brainstorming.
Right.
We can then we've got a copywriter in house who's fully trained in that area, and that is his profession. So he's quite good at writing, and he's using it to help speed up his workflow in the sense of ideas. He can then either use ChatGPT to help add some extra, I guess, source onto his content that he's written from scratch, and vice
Right.
versa. He can also use it to start some of that content. And I think a big thing is using it for fact checking as well, which we know is not entirely accurate, but different things like you can pull in resources, information about certain topics that might be helpful to that workflow as well.
Is it mainly just for the content side of things, or do you kind of use ChatGPT and other AI tools for, let's say, different areas as well? Because I think ChatGPT has plugins for SEO now, so some people are making the switch to using ChatGPT for SEO purposes as well.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of things that we're doing, and it's different across different teams. Personally, what I'm using it for is to build a bit of scripts and things that can help in the workflow of the agencies. So, some give you a bit of background. Like when I was doing freelancing and when I first started in SEO, I was technically a web developer. I learned, I did a college course. I got a diploma in web development. So it was back then PHP, MySQL, that sort of development, which is the web has come a long way since then. And so my programming skills are pretty rusty these days because I don't do a lot of it. And so I've been using ChatGPT to build integrations between things like, say, Toggle, which is our time utilization software, and Slack, which is our messaging platform. And so what I've been able to do, thanks to ChatGPT, is to build some scripts that can do things like check a record on Toggle to see how far we are behind a project or how close we are to completing that project, pull that into the relevant Slack channel, and then alert the team that that's where we're at. And I think that for me has been very powerful because if I coded it myself, it would take me some time being rusty. If I didn't code it myself, I'd have to find a developer to do that. And I think we're not talking very complex, applications here. We're not needing to build a platform in itself. We're just kind of building connectors and things like that. And I think, yeah, as an agency, automation is always going to be helpful. And that's something, yeah, I guess in my role that I've really been playing with and really having a lot of fun with and seeing a lot of success there too.
So curious then, in terms of automation and, well, ChatGPT to kind of give the content, is there a way to kind of also use the pairing of those two for, let's say, paid ads as well?
Yeah, I think similar thing. Yeah, it's all the language model is all based on prompts, right? So you can prompt and you can say, "Here is my current ad. Well, here are my current three ads. Here are how they are performing. Make some suggestions on how we could maybe try something different, right? Or improve this." And so we can use it for that aspect as well. I think in the paid context, we're using a lot of Google's AI and machine learning, which is built into their platform already. And so I haven't seen a direct application for that as yet. But what I think is really good, and this is where I guess more I see value in ChatGPT outside of the language model, is the mathematical model, because you can plug in things like historical data and ask it to build a forecast moving forward. right? Those types of things are really good to help maybe identify things that you might not be able to see because you're either too close to the data, or perhaps there's just such an array of data that it takes a bit of time to sift through. So that's how I think, at least in my role, in remembering I'm not as close to the actual tactical work as I used to be, especially in paid marketing. That's some of the practical application that I've seen to date.
In terms of then accuracy, would you say that for the most part it is accurate in terms of the data, or you have to take it with a pinch of salt and do a bit of research yourself?
I think pinch of salt. I mean, if you wanted to know the capital city of Australia, like it's going to know that, and you're going to be pretty comfortable with the answer that it returns, right? And I think what I'm seeing is very similar to when Google really took off, and a lot of people were searching there, and sometimes facts weren't facts, right? It was just like what the search engine returned.
Right.
Google's come a long way since then, right? And I think ChatGPT, from the most part, where I see people online in different communities complaining about it, is where it's getting things wrong based on, say, something very technical like a medical query.
Right.
Um, or, if you ask it, how do you do SEO? It might just respond and say, well, you should build links, when really you need to do a whole bunch of other things, right? So I think definitely take it with a grain of salt, but also, like anything, you've got to cross-check your facts. Use
Yeah.
multiple sources, not just ChatGPT.
Have you used Bard versus Bing Chat as well, or has it been mainly ChatGPT because the other two have been lacking?
Yeah, pretty much. Look, I've played with Bard. I played
Yeah.
with the chatbot in Bing, and when I say play, it's more just like, I guess, to kind of see what it would look like for the end user. And I think what we have to remember is these are models that are built into search engines to help users find what they're looking for. Whereas ChatGPT, that's not what it's built for, right? It's a completely different, I guess, output where people are using it to more of an assistive based sort of tool. And so I think they all work in similar ways based on the models that they use, but the output is vastly different. And I think I'm more excited to see how these applications, rather than kind of be a bit shiny and give me maybe things that I could already find before. I want to see it help to take me through a journey that would maybe save me a few clicks, if that makes sense. So instead of having to
Right.
do a search, go through few different things, come back, build my own comparisons, like it would be great that there would be an assistant there. I could tick a few things, tell it what I'm wanting to do more specifically, and it go and do that thing, and then pull it back to me. Now, that's complex in itself, but it also takes some time to generate, right?
Right.
And so for me, in my position where I'm doing, hundreds of searches a day, I've become quite well adept at doing that myself. And so quite often I'm finding it's faster for me to do it on my own than it is to use something like a Bard, right? At least at this
Right.
point in these early days. Yeah.
Yeah, but with the up and coming search generative experience from Google, do you think things would change up then for you?
Yes and no. I think that's still slow. Like I've played with it and I've seen results come back in sort of 5 seconds, right? Which it doesn't sound like a long time, but we're now used to an instant world, right? I remember when Google sort of really stepped into the arena because I think one big reason, at least in Australia, everyone was on dial-up, and
Right.
when you wanted to load a search engine like Yahoo, which was prominent at the time, everything was very slow to load because you had the portal, the Yahoo portal, it had news and everything in it as well. Then Google came along and it was literally just a logo and a white screen and no images, just text, right? Now, we've moved a long way away from that, but I think in that, everyone's gotten used to very quick results. And so I can't see in its current landscape why someone like, say, perhaps that's not in this industry, that's maybe less tech savvy, maybe say my father, for example, who's obviously a lot older than I am, why he would want to use that over just a standard search, right?
Right.
And I can't see why someone like me would want to use that when it takes so long and it ends up giving me very similar results, which I could type for anyway. So I'm excited at the premise, but I don't think I'm sold yet. I really think that Google's application of this has been in response to Microsoft, being that they were, late to the game, so they rushed out Bard. That was it's a big failure at launch. We know stock prices dropped, everything like that.
Right.
And now the SGE, yeah, it's got some concepts. It looks good, like it could be good, but so many search results are better off without it. And I think the bigger question is, how does monetization come into play, where
Right.
that is the entire purpose of what Google tries to do. It is the majority of their revenue. And so suddenly, if there are no more ads being served, that wouldn't make sense for them. So that's not something they would do.
So you kind of are, let's say, in the future, maybe you'll have more, you'll be more inclined to kind of use SGE and other Google advancements. But like for right now, it's not really there for you, let's say.
No, not as a user, but as an owner of a search engine business, then it absolutely is important to me, right? Because
Right.
I see it the same as when voice search came out. We bought the first Google Home device because we wanted to understand how it ranked results. So we'd talk to it and we'd write it down, and then we'd open on a computer next to us and see if the result was the same. We'd open the mobile phone, see if that result was different. And we start to kind of build this comparison against all of it. And I really see that being very similar with SGE, where I don't really want to use it personally because it doesn't give much benefit to me, but I need to know how it works, and I need to know how do I get my clients in those sets of results. And so I
Right.
know from some things I've seen, schema is going to be quite important, as it has been in recent years. The other thing I've seen as well is that it's different for everyone. So personalization is probably going to come into that play as well. And I've also seen for myself, I can search for the same thing multiple times on the same computer with private tabs and whatever else, and I'm still getting different results. So there's no real clear indication as to how to get your result there. And so my experience would tell me that the same foundational elements of SEO apply. But it's going to be really interesting to see how that all pans out. And just like anything else, as SEOs, we like to experiment. We try things. We unpack. We document. We share. We're a very big sharing community, and I think I'm excited to see what comes out of different people doing those really big experiments at scale.
Right. And I think one thing you could probably share is it's a bit of a test, let's say. If SGE comes out and it's going to be harder for SEOs like ourselves to kind of get our link to the top, how exactly will ad campaigns now fare, considering that this might be taking a huge blow?
Yeah, look, I'm really confident that Google will always find a way to monetize. We've seen this, excuse me, we've seen this in recent times with Google Shopping, right? A lot of those transactional queries, when you're searching for them now, you don't even see anything organic for half the page that you have to scroll down, and so you've got images right up the top. They're all paid placements. They're very visual, right? If you're searching for, I bought some sneakers recently. That's all paid, and so I can't see them not finding a way to do something similar with SGE, and making it appear in such a way that it's more beneficial for the user. At the same time, we're kind of moving into a world where advertising is getting worse and worse reputation over time. We've got Apple and their iPhone. Their entire tagline is privacy. That's Apple, right? And so we've seen this with iOS 13, 14, etc., where a lot of this won't be possible. So it'll be interesting. Perhaps it'll be completely opt-in at some point, where you can say you can just accept that you're going to see ads, but maybe you get to choose the ones that you get to see. But yeah, I can't see a way that it won't be monetized.
And one way to maybe kind of work around, let's say, that would be to go with affiliate marketing instead. Because I think that would be like not a surefire way, but if SGE is happening that way and Google Ads are trying to maybe take a little bit of a downturn for now because we don't really know what could happen, I think affiliate marketing could be that turn two that we could just use instead in that meantime. But what would be the best way to actually go about using affiliate marketing to your advantage?
Affiliate is an interesting one because a lot of people will see it as a channel that they have to pay for twice, in the sense that it's hard to attribute a lot of the time if you would have got that sale without the affiliate partner. So I think affiliate will always make sense where you've got things like roundup posts, or you've got a magazine that's talking about, say, the the top 10 laptops of 2023 so far, right? And you can get involved in a affiliate program for that, and you're a seller of laptops. That's quite helpful for you. But I also think we can't discredit the influencer culture that we have, where that almost is the new affiliate, right? And at a simplistic view, you've got, say, Instagram influencers that traditionally have received the product. They talk about the product, they get paid for that placement, and then that gets a lot of traction there. Now we're seeing that quite a lot on TikTok, right? Where they're doing unboxing videos, or they're eating the latest chocolate bar, or what have you, and that actually has a big impact on SEO. And the way that that impacts SEO is that when somebody sees something like that on TikTok, like, say, for example, the latest chocolate bar, they might then search for that chocolate bar through a search engine like Google, that they may never have had that search before, right? And so that then will impact your organic traffic. It looks like you've suddenly got more branded traffic, and perhaps some other terms there as well. And that's kind of see this all tying in together, which again goes back to our agency ethos. Like, we can't just do a single channel. We're blind to the others, and it's not going to work for us. So I'm not sure if I answered your question on affiliates there, but more just looking at that ecosystem. We are in the business of growing clients, their
Right.
their sales, their revenue, all of that sort of thing. And so we're really trying to look at that entire ecosystem and figure out where we can best make an impact for them.
Right. So, what if I told you that with the whole SGE and I think Google's perspectives as well? What if I told you that technically platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts would be the go-to now for, let's say, social promotions? In the sense that if you do now search for something on Google, you would be more likely to come across a YouTube short video or a TikTok video, where I think that would be best applied with affiliate marketing. So just trying to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think we see that as well with SGE. I mean, if we're talking about informational query, um, a lot of, I guess, society in general, where previously we were reading a lot of text. So, we come from a world where we had scripts, we had books, that all translated online with text. Now we've got the bandwidth of faster internet connections, there's a lot more video, right? Um, and if you're looking for, say, how to run a podcast, most likely a lot of people, I imagine, would get more benefit watching a video about how to run a podcast than reading, 300 pages that they bought from a bookstore. And so when we're coming back to affiliate, I think you will start to see some of those YouTube shorts, that sort of thing, be embedded more in the search engine. And there could be some monetization assigned to that, right? Where those influencers, they're currently being paid on YouTube to talk about these things based on the views they have as a CPM model, what have you. That could very well come into SGE. And then, so as a retailer, how do you tap into that? Well, you either need to have content yourself, which is where we talk about this ecosystem of, you have to be there if you want to stay relevant and play. Or you don't go that path, but then you need to build strong relationships with people who are there. But all speculation at this point, but I think I can see it going that way. I heard a stat recently that there's a significant portion of the population, the younger generation, when they're looking for a new restaurant, they look through TikTok, and that is how they find that new restaurant. And so someone like Google is threatened by that, and they should be, because where I might, so I'm on the higher side of 30 at the moment. I might search for, I don't know, Mexican restaurant near me. That's how I would find that. I'd look at reviews, and that's something that I would check out. I might talk to some friends, whereas other people, they're just scrolling through TikTok. They see some delicious Mexican food at a certain place in the radius where they are, and that's where they will go.
No need to technically even go to Google at that point.
That's right. And it was always, Google was always that seek and you shall find type thing. So you search, you get a result, you then view that result. Is that good? Yes. If it's not, go back and find another one. It's almost removing the need to search altogether. Where I work with a young team, and a lot of them, that they give me this feedback. They share this with me. They tell me that this is how they find things, and they just either make a mental note that they want to go to that place later on, using the restaurant example, or they write it down and they start to build a list of places that they want to go to, but very rarely they're searching for a restaurant.
Basically TikTok itself as a search engine. If that is the case, where more and more people are kind of searching for whatever they do need on TikTok instead of Google for that matter, how do some places react to that? Where, let's say for India, as an example, we have TikTok banned. So in some places where I think in America also there was one or two states that kind of also banned TikTok. So when it comes to like the legality of it and which countries are allowed to actually show that type of content, one question would be how long can we expect it to continue that way, where you can still upload content on TikTok before it gets banned in your country? Is it that much better of a marketing channel than the other marketing channels we've already spoken about?
Great questions. I think number one is it's political, right? It's very political. It is in Australia, so Australian government has banned it in the sense that if you work in the public service here, you cannot have that on your device. Um, in general public, it is not as yet, and I think it's really political. Coming out of China and all of that sort of thing, and so um, it's almost the opposite, right? Where we've had Google banned in China for a very long time, or at least
Right.
in a very limited capacity. Now it's the opposite. We're starting to get banned in other countries. So I think just like anything, we can't just look at a single channel. It's definitely on the up, but it's not the channel. And
Right.
we see this change all the time. Like it wasn't so long ago, Snapchat was king of things. Um, I don't even know if that's still in operation, to be honest. I imagine it's a
Same.
very small market share. Things just
Right.
change all the time. Facebook as well. I know there's quite a big shift. People are moving away from it. They don't want to use it anymore. It doesn't have the benefit it used to have. So we start to see these trends change over time, and I think um, you know. Uh, being that it's on trend now, there's going to be an entire generation that will suddenly be a little bit older, and they don't want to be where the young kids are, and the young kids don't want to be where the older ones are. So I think that will
Right.
change. Number two, I think the question was you asked about how companies can kind of get in front of it. I've seen a really big uptake in things like packaging. And
Right.
so what I mean by that is before you might buy, I don't know, a cup. Right? I'm just looking at what's on my desk here. You might buy a cup that you drink out of, and it would just come in a very boring brown paper box with some bubble wrap, and that was kind of it. Now I'm seeing, at least at the product level, e-commerce is really spending a lot of effort to make that experience a lot more pleasurable. So you don't just receive a cup. You might receive a cup in a very cool box. That box might be like, "Hey, champion, here's your cup," and it might make you feel good. Inside the cup, there might be a voucher to something, or maybe a lollipop, or some sort of surprise that you didn't know was there. And what that's doing is starting to build that culture of people who are filming their daily lives essentially on things like TikTok to say, or previously Snapchat, to say, "Oh, look at this cool cup that I got. Look how cool the packaging is. I got a free lollipop. Guys, I'd recommend that you get a cup like this." Now, that's free advertising, really, because previously you'd have to pay an influencer to do that. And so I'm seeing quite a lot of that. And I think, what I would recommend to my clients, just kind of going back to that ecosystem, is how can you improve your customer experience end to end so that someone will want to pick up their phone, record their experience, and share it with their network? That you don't have to do anything. You just have to create a good experience, right? Which
Yeah.
obviously is harder to do than as I'm very simplistically putting it. But that's how I would see that going. Again, personally, I don't use TikTok. My experience with TikTok has been purely to just understand what it is, how it works, and then how it can be applied to this industry, to digital marketing and our clients. But that's something that I've seen work, and that's something that I would advise everyone on. And at the very, I guess, least, if you are a brand that sells to an audience where the audience is spending a lot of the time on TikTok, well, then you need to be there too. And we've seen that as well across different markets as well. The financial sector, for example, it's probably benefit there somewhere, but it's not going to be as beneficial versus a sort of a younger company that sells fashionable clothing targeted at a younger generation. They're more likely to see some clothing that they want on TikTok to then again go and search for that in a search engine, to then click through to the website to then purchase the item. And so you've got, sort of three kind of pronged approach there. That is where, to answer your question number two, is what people should be doing.
So while that works at a product level, is there a way to kind of make the experience a lot better for, let's say, an agency that's offering services?
I think that any point of difference is a good point of difference. So, for example, we do, as soon as a client signs on with us, we do our best to try and meet them in person, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but in the modern world where everyone's doing meetings back to back on video
It's,
conferences and
yeah,
things, to go and shake hands, sit in a room, have a few laughs while you're waiting for the AV equipment to connect, maybe have a coffee, go to lunch after, like all of that sort of thing. I think it goes a long way. And to do more of that, you can't just do it once, right? I think there's other things where we try to involve clients as well, where we might have, say, an event that we're going to, tickets to something. We'll invite them to come along. Right now, this is completely different to packaging in for product and for TikTok, but it's a point of difference because realistically, there's a lot of agencies everywhere that do SEO. You guys do SEO as well, from what I understand. And so, why would someone pick yogurt over you? Um, and that's what we think about all the time: is how can we make a point of difference aside from letting our work speak for itself and really do good in that area? How do we make the client feel good? And I think a big part of that too is understanding the role of that client in the organization, because we are invested in our team's career progression and we try to be invested in our clients' career progression too. Because if we understand the goals of their business, but also the goals of them professionally, if we can help them look good to their superiors and, sorry, superior is not the right word, they're, the higher ups. If we can make them look good from that perspective, they're going to be more sticky with us. They're going to want to
right.
work with us more. We're now a true partnership, right? We are benefiting from the relationship from an engagement perspective. They're benefiting from the relationship from their own career, and then their company is benefiting from the results that we're driving as well. So that I hope that answers your question. But this is some
It
ideas
does.
and
It
some things
does.
that we've been working on. Yeah.
What are your three books that you would recommend our viewers and listeners?
Three books. So I think the two that come to mind in one of them I read many, many years ago, and I've actually read several times, is Good to Great by Jim Collins, which is a data-driven approach to understanding what makes a great company versus a good company. There's a lot of good companies out there, and there's very rarely great companies. And I think a lot of the principles in that book can be applied to businesses that you run or that you work in, or even just life in general. And I'd recommend that to pretty much anyone that's interested in business.
Okay.
That's one. The other one is Atomic Habits by James Clear, which was very popular in recent years. That one I think is just it's very good for mindset and very good at understanding why we do certain things. I think also very helpful in the modern world where you have so much distraction through smartphones and what have you. I think it's quite important that you develop good habits and hold yourself accountable to those.
What would be then three podcasts that you would recommend our viewers and listeners?
Yeah. So in, I guess, the agency experience, you would have there's one called the Smart Agency Podcast. That's by Jason Swank. Jason has built and sold and exited agencies over a period of time, and he does a show similar to this. It's a lot shorter. It's typically about half an hour where he interviews guests, asks them questions, and it's really, I think you can get a lot of takeaways from that about how other agencies do things. And so he'll cover topics from sales, retention, HR, culture, how to sell, like all of different things. And I think I've gotten a lot of value from him and from that podcast, and I definitely recommend that to listeners as well. Um, One that I've been listening to recently is not on the topic of SEO or digital marketing, is more about how. So I'm a recent father, of course, and so there is one called "How Other Dads Dad." That's by Hamish Blake. So he is a television personality, a radio personality in Australia. But what he does is he interviews other dads. And he asks them about their experiences, what's working well for them, what did they find surprising. And so I really like that one as well. And there's another one on SEO. that just escapes my mind at the moment. But I might be able to just email you about what it is. I haven't listened to it for a long time, but it's actually very good.
You kind of gave it to me in bite-sized information, and so for that, I'm truly grateful. Thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching that episode. I hope you enjoyed. For more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe.